What if two small stone heads could unravel everything you thought you knew about reality? Two kids made a discovery that would have an impact for decades in the quiet town of Hexham, which is tucked away in the rolling hills of Northumberland. The odd carved heads, which were unearthed from a garden bed, first seemed harmless. They were crude, eerie, and almost ancient, but their presence marked the start of something much more sinister. Things moved by themselves. A hybrid of a man and a beast was seen slinking through the darkness. Mysterious happenings struck the families who owned the heads, but the heads themselves provided no explanations. Only silence, only mystery. Were these traces of an extinct pagan ritual, a kid's abandoned artwork, or vessels for something much darker? The distinction between fact and folklore became more hazy as scholars and researchers became interested. Then, as abruptly as they had appeared, the heads disappeared. What was discovered in the soil is only one aspect of the Hexham head story. Another is the impact those discoveries had on everyone who came into contact with them. Because stories that don't have closure can sometimes be the most terrifying. Also, there are times when reality is stranger than fiction. Hexham, 1971. A small community where secrets were believed to remain buried in the ground and days moved slowly, nestled in the pastoral calm of Northumberland. It was in this quiet place beneath the surface of an ordinary backyard that something extraordinary was brought to light. Colin and Leslie Robson, two brothers, were digging casually in the garden of their Reed Avenue family home when they hit something solid. Not metal, not bone, but stone. They pulled two tiny spherical heads about the size of tennis balls from the ground. Their faces, which were carved with primitive human features, were strangely blank but almost vigilant. One had a kind of empty expression, the other a thin crown or helmet. Despite their basic structure, they had an odd magnetic quality as though they contained a weight much heavier than stone. Confused, their parents clutched them in their hands and muttered, "Are these ancient relics? Children's toys from another era lost? Roman artifacts? Pagan idols?" Speculation immediately spread as theories floated over the town like mist. Soon curiosity grew beyond the family's home. The unexpected news caused a stir among the local community, and soon after, rumors became obsessions. Researchers studying the paranormal started to circle, attracted by the allure of an unidentified force. The heads showed up with no warning, and their story had only just begun, regardless of whether they were hoaxes, lost artifacts, or signs of something sinister. After the Robsons moved out of their house on Reed Avenue, silence returned, but only for some time. Nellie Dodd and her kids replaced them, not realizing that something abnormal had been stirred behind those walls. The quiet quickly broke up once more, and the atmosphere in the house seemed to change to one that was tense and agitated. It was initially felt by Nellie. The heads, now left behind, had been taken in as mere curiosities. Then things started moving for no apparent reason. A vase tumbling without wind, a slamming door when no one was around. At night, while everyone was asleep, footsteps echoed through the floors. The rooms had a chill that no fire could dispel. Lights flickered and shadows stretched strangely across the walls. Her children began to speak in whispers. They claimed that something or someone walked by them in the corridor. They screamed one night about a creature that had eyes too human to be an animal and was a hybrid of a man and a beast. It was spotted once more, just outside the house, with an odd shape, primitive and wild, yet standing upright as if it didn't quite belong here. The neighbors also began to notice. There were traces of something strange that passed through the town. The house has turned into a dread magnet. The news got out. The heads weren't just mysterious anymore, they were dangerous. And the line between nightmare and folklore had started to get hazy. Dr. Ann Ross was not the kind to believe in superstition. She was a scholar whose reputation was etched in Celtic history. For a long time, her work had been based on facts, study, and the old writings that occupied libraries rather than on stories derived from tradition. So when the Hexham heads went into her possession, they were just another riddle, an artifact from a bygone era that might have some historical value. She initially treated them with suspicion, supposing the weird tales that surrounded them to be pure fiction. But even her strong intellectual background was shaken by what unfolded next. Things started changing as soon as the heads were brought inside her house to be studied. The The house was filled with inexplicable sounds at night, including whispering, knocks on the walls, and doors creaking open when no one was there. It was initially seen by her daughter, who described it as a half-animal, half-man thing. It was a haunting, unmistakable, and impossible to deny. The creature, like an old nightmare brought to life, appeared before her, despite having no place in the world of reason. At that point, Dr. Ross, who had previously been a staunch supporter of reason, started noticing the connections between these odd happenings and the ancient pagan customs she had been researching. She began to believe that the heads might have been made for a ritualistic reason, perhaps to channel or collect some dark, ancient energy. The more she looked into it, the more she was drawn into the mystery, her intellect disappearing in the face of the inexplicable. Although her newfound belief was disturbing, it also added significance to her conclusions. When a valued scholar supported the possibility of the paranormal, it changed everything. The Hexham Head story had risen from the background to the front of the public attention. The revelation from Dez Craigie, a former renter of the Robson residence, gave the Hexham Heads yet another turn. He claimed responsibility for crafting the heads, but his story cast a long shadow over the mystery. Craigie claims the heads were merely a light-hearted sculptural experiment, the result of his 1950s boredom. He claimed that he had carved them out of concrete, not ancient stone, and had crafted their faces with no deeper purpose than a whim to pass the time. His story at first seemed to provide a straightforward answer. Tests on the heads revealed that they were, in fact, composed of cement rather than the worn stone that one might expect from ancient items. Craigie's story was further supported by the style's appearance as being more contemporary than the elaborate Celtic art styles. But there was something off about the explanation he gave. His timeline was inconsistent, and certain details didn't quite add up. How could Dr. Ross and her daughter's unusual experiences be brought about by something so harmless and ordinary? The happenings around the heads looked too intense and unsettling to be dismissed as a fabrication. As the gaps mounted, a darker possibility began to take root. Was there something Craigie was hiding? Did he refuse to admit that there was more to the heads? The Hexham Heads mystery denied a neat, logical explanation. The more one looked for, the more the shadows appeared to envelop the truth, keeping it just out of reach. Some of the most enduring paranormal experiences in the world can be explained by the stone tape theory, which was initially put forth in the 1970s and is both terrifying and lyrical. It suggests that some materials, stone in particular, can serve as silent witnesses to the severity of traumatizing experiences. Under the right conditions, these materials are believed to record these encounters, which are later replayed like a horror movie reel. These stored memories can come back to life when the proper energy is present, producing unsettling feelings and ghostly visions. In the case of the Hexham Heads, this theory provides a haunting lens through which to view their past. Perhaps these tiny stone heads are spiritual recorders imprinted with the energy of long-forgotten history, trauma, or old rituals, rather than just being objects of the past. These long-buried echoes may be resurfacing through their strange presence and the paranormal activities that surround them. Believers consider the concept as a means of explaining many eerie experiences in which memories of the past echo in the present, like ghostly whispers from the other side, while others reject it as pseudoscience. Frank Hyde, a renowned paranormal researcher, joined the Hexham Heads on their mysterious journey after they had captured the interest of many people, including Dr. Ann Ross. The heads were given to him for further investigation, but the tale would take an odd turn once more. Hyde was in a serious car accident shortly after he received the heads. He was miraculously spared, but what happened next was much more disturbing. He became unreachable. Robson and others tried to get in touch with Hyde, but there was no response. The heads then disappeared in the middle of this eerie silence. They never left a sign of where they were. One of the biggest mysteries of the entire affair remains unresolved since the heads, which had previously been the focus of heated research, just vanished into thin air. The Hexham Heads tale had become a lesser known, but it was never completely forgotten. A rare clip from a BBC film that surfaced decades after their last confirmed appearance sparked interest in the strange story. The public was given a new look at the mystery through this video, which featured close-ups of the mysterious heads, dramatizations, and interviews. As if called upon by the magic of the internet, a new wave of curiosity swept over the mystery. Podcasts, YouTube deep dives, and Reddit threads all surfaced with fresh perspectives and hypotheses. The heads, which had previously been thought of as mere artifacts, suddenly had a new cultural value and represented the core of folk horror. They reminded us all that certain mysteries are too big to be left in the past, and their eerie, almost otherworldly presence existed as a symbol of the unknown. The Hexham heads are no longer merely an odd period in the history of the paranormal. They have become an image of the unknown, a strange puzzle that blends horror with hoaxes. Their story speaks to the human need to search for answers where there may be none. Others regard the heads as something far darker, infused with memories, energy, or a curse that haunts all who come into contact with them, while others consider them as nothing more than ancient carved stones, relics of a bygone era. That was all for today. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the Suspense Room to unlock more stories.